That should be the number one thing that guides you through sex, but we're not taught about that at all. The people that struggled with sex when they're stressed, the one thing is getting yourself to baseline. I see so many clients when they become stressed, it's the worst thing you can do for your relationship.
Laura Miano is an experienced sex therapist and founder of Miano Clinical Sexology.
She helps people overcome sexual anxiety, rebuild confidence, and create more fulfilling, intimate lives.
So many young people are learning to have sex through watching porn. How detrimental is porn to a young person's development?
Young people don't learn that communication is a really important part of sex. Body image. With men, they might think they need to have like this certain size penis. There's just like unrealistic standards.
How do you help someone who's been in a long-term relationship and they still love their partner but they've lost attraction to them? What is something that maybe someone can do if they do struggle with erectile dysfunction? Somebody who is dissatisfied with their partner, what would be your advice for best steps?
Figure out like where they have experienced pleasure in the past. In order to progress, develop your sex life, communicating verbally is just the most efficient way to do it. The final one that I see a lot is
Welcome to Good Humans Podcast. Laura Miano. How you going, Laura?
I'm good. I'm really good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming here in my very warm home on the Gold Coast right now. I feel like today is pretty much the first day of summer. It is sweltering hot, but you've just got off the plane coming from Melbourne, so...
Yes, and it was a high of 13 today,
so
I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, you went from freezing cold to boiling hot. I'm actually flying to Bali tonight, so I'm like, it's a little bit of a pre-warning for me of what I think is coming tonight. But the first question I love to always ask my guest is, what are you grateful for right now, today in life, apart from the weather?
Apart from the weather. I would say I'm really grateful for my family at the moment. I had a big family weekend. I had my nieces and nephews sleep over at my house on Friday, and then my niece's birthday on Sunday, my 1-year-old niece. So I've just been around family all weekend and just feeling, really grateful to have them around me. And we're quite tight knit as an extended family. So at the moment, just feeling really grateful for that.
I love that. I completely agree. I had my little niece here yesterday as well, Bobby, my older sister, and her husband live overseas for 7 months a year, and they literally just got back. So to spend an afternoon with the family over the weekend was I totally agree. Grateful for family.
Yeah.
The next question that's a new question on this podcast is, what if you were only allowed to spend 14 minutes a day? I've just written a book all about giving 14 minutes a day to your mental health, which is 1% of your day. So if you were told you're only allowed to spend 1% of your day on your mental health, what would you do and why?
I would pray. That would be my 14 minutes. I've recently returned back to kind of exploring my like religious background. Growing up, I was Catholic. I kind of left it for quite a while, like 15 years. And now I've come back to it in a way that suits me. And what I've really loved is the practice of praying, which I've seen research, and it's on par with like mindfulness and meditation. It's all kind of a similar thing where you're kind of having a bit of quiet mentally, and I guess one, showing gratitude, two, maybe exploring feelings that you might not have brought to the surface, and just spending some time, I guess, feeling like I'm connecting with something bigger than me. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. That's a new one. I've asked about 5 or 6 people now, and everyone's had a different one. And that's one that I wasn't expecting. Do you go to church? Like when do you go to church weekly? Or?
I don't go weekly. I've gone since I've kind of returned back to it, I think 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
And it's always really beautiful. It's like, it's something that I've returned back to in a way that like suits me and is, I kind of, it's all subjective to me. So the way that it kind of suits my life, and I feel like it's really all about love. So that's what I take from it. I take rather than like the good and the bad and the right and the wrong. To me, it's more just about like having a deeper love for yourself.
I love that. It's such a beautiful way to explain like religion and how you attach to religion, because it's probably maybe a wrong assumption, but in the work that you're a clinical sexologist.
Yes.
Does that have any connotation to do with religion that do you feel judged? Do you we're going to get into what you do, but maybe now's the perfect time to let everyone know like who you are and what you do. And then, if that has any implications with, finding religion again.
Yeah, it has been a bit of a tricky journey because, I mean, technically, if you go from like the right and the wrong side of things, some of the things that I promote in my work would be seen as wrong through Catholicism. But I think also sometimes religion is taken too literally, and because it is so much about love and being a better person, you can kind of look at it through your own lens. And, where I would kind of use like my experience with God and with Catholicism to make me a better person is my own values. So if I feel like I shouldn't have treated someone a certain way, or I didn't like how I acted in a certain, situation, that's where I would kind of reflect on myself and want to change my behaviors rather than maybe thinking about some of the things that would be like right and wrong.
Yeah, judged.
Yeah.
That's interesting. No, thank you for sharing that. So let's, I guess, before we move back into learn how you got to this part of your story, do you want to let the audience know who you are and what you do and your incredible business? You've got the Miano Clinical Sexology clinic down in Melbourne. Yeah,
Yep.
tell us all about it. A little bit about it, because we're going to catch up to learn all about it. Just give us a bit of an elevator pitch, who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So, yes, I'm a clinical sex therapist. I've been in the field for about 6 years now. I started my own practice last year, and I've just absolutely loved being able to kind of do my own thing and be a business owner. It is based in Melbourne, but it's also online. So I see clients from all around the country as well as internationally as well. But yeah, through the practice, as on top of kind of seeing clients and having sessions, I also release resources. There'll be courses releasing soon as well. I like to come on podcasts and do like media and kind of education. So yeah, between all of those different things, I'm kept very busy.
I love that. Obviously, everybody listening to this podcast has come from somebody having sex. So as much as it's a taboo topic, sex, it is something that hopefully most of us get to do in our life and regularly, and use it as, a way to show love, to show connection. It's such obviously it's the most important part of life is people having sex, or life wouldn't be here. So yeah, let's just start with one or two, why do you love getting to do what you do to sort of destigmatize and make people feel more natural and more comfortable and confident to have sex and explore their sexuality?
Yeah, I would say the number one reason I love doing what I do is I love helping people. It's really rewarding to provide a space for people to talk, explore their own feelings, to open up about maybe things they haven't shared with other people. And to be able to provide that, because people often don't have any outlet where they can talk about these kind of things, even with their partners sometimes. So yeah, it's very rewarding to be able to provide that space and then be able to help clients to have a more fulfilling sex life and achieve their goals.
Amazing. Let's get to know your story a little bit, but everybody listening, listen all the way through, because we're going to go, I guess, into some questions that I feel like maybe the audience would have about things that might feel uncomfortable to ask somebody else, but I'll ask you today. That way people can, learn some things that maybe they can bring into their relationships, or, if they're single, it might be something to do with sex toys, or, let's have just a chat where we can bring some value and, open-mindedness to people today. But let's get to know your story a little bit. As much as you're willing to share, let's go back. Where'd you grow up? What was life like as a kid? Family life for you? How, were you brought up?
I grew up in a suburb called Greenvale in Melbourne, and it was very just green trees. When I think about my childhood, I just think about playing a lot. I was always playing with my friends in the front garden, very Australian kind of upbringing, water bombs, trampoline, all of that stuff. I have two siblings, older siblings, and grew up with my parents. So what was the next question?
No, that's fine. That just gives us a bit of a setup. Grew up in Melbourne with, pretty normal childhood, lots of greenery, kind of where you're 2 months older than me. So I feel like, we've lived a very similar timeline. The Sydney Olympics came to town or came to Australia when we were kids, and kind of have always had, for me anyway, that sort of sporting culture. Going into high school, what were you like? Were you academic? Were you into sport? If I was, to come to school with you in high school, what sort of person would I feel like you are?
Yes, okay. In school, I was definitely a bit naughty and a bit cheeky. For me, school was more about learning about people. It was more of a social thing for me. On reflection, I wish I did maybe pay a little bit more attention in school, because I didn't really apply myself as much as I could, and I didn't really see how much I could achieve until kind of after school when I kind of knuckled down a bit more.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I still had so much fun. I had a lot of fun, like exploring who I was, learning about myself, making friends, meeting people. So yeah, I would say school, I was fun, I was cheeky.
Love that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about now finishing school. This is a pretty interesting time for a lot of people, especially, if you feel like you didn't apply yourself and you weren't a kid who was like, I want to go and do this at university. What was the end of school like for you? Where did you think your life was going to go career-wise? What was the year, finishing school and the few years after like for you?
Yeah, so when I finished school, I was thinking I wanted to work in fashion. I always had kind of like a pull to being a creative. And my sister was living in Paris at the time. So I went over and hung out with her there, and she was always doing fun things like at lots of parties and fashion shows and whatnot. So when I went and visited her, I really loved going into that world. And I thought that I was going to do the same. But then after kind of coming back to Melbourne each time, I kind of realized I had to work hard to get to where like my sister had gotten to in Paris, and I realized I didn't have the drive for fashion that maybe she had.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought back to what my other interests were, and I mean in school I used to always watch science documentaries. When I was at school, I was always really cheeky, but then I would go home and I would watch lots of documentaries on psychology and astronomy. And I was always a very curious person, but I guess back then I didn't understand it. I just thought I wasn't like applying myself in school. But now on reflection, I can see I was actually very, very keen to learn.
Just not about the topics that you were being forced to learn.
I think so, yeah. And just the environment of school, I was just distracted.
Yeah.
I just wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I kind of went back and was figuring out what I liked. I really loved psychology. So I decided I would kind of go down that path. And then, yeah, always had a kind of interest in sex therapy. Like I felt very Sex and the City. I really loved watching Sex and the City when I was younger. So I wasn't planning on being a sex therapist straight away. I was going to do psychology and see where it went.
Mm-hmm.
But the further I got into psychology, I mean, I absolutely loved it, but I became more curious about sex therapy because it seemed like a career that maybe was a little bit more fun, and you could do there was a few more opportunities that maybe psychology didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
It was also quite niche. And I was always quite comfortable talking about sex. So yeah, then I eventually kind of went into that and I never looked back. I found my calling.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to go into this too much, but like you say you're comfortable talking about sex. What was it brought up to you like in your household? Like, how are you, or was it more so when you were with your friends and you're comfortable talking about it? Because I know a lot of young women, a lot of young men find it hard even to talk to their peers about, different things when it comes to sex. What was that experience like for you? Because you said you're quite comfortable.
Yeah, so I think I was comfortable because growing up, my mum was comfortable making jokes about sex. It was always like little cheeky jokes between like me and the girls, like my sister and her and I. Okay. But it created this safe space around sex. It was a bit cheeky. It was lighthearted. It wasn't like super serious. Mm-hmm. I mean, my dad was quite like strict Italian man, so like definitely didn't get that from him. But my mom had this like cheekiness around her. So I think that kind of just taught me that sex is not something to be too afraid of. Mm-hmm. And then when I was in high school, I can kind of even think back now, I think I approached the topic in a similar way. Like I would tell jokes to my friends about it. And again, it was always like just like private conversation with me and like my girlfriends. But, at a time when you're like 16, you're developing sexually, you start to like show interest in other people, you start to explore your own body. I was like quite vocal about that with my friends, and I was curious about everyone else's experience. And yeah, I just realized like it was something that I felt very comfortable talking about.
Yeah, nice. With what you know now and your education and your expertise in this space, how good or bad do you think, I mean, your experience with the education was at school? And just as a whole, from speaking to clients, what they've shared with you, their education, I never could learn anything about this at school.
Yeah.
And off that, if you were to write, like, what would be the few topics that you feel like we need to be educating students better about? Bit of a loaded question, but I think you get the idea of like, how would you, do you think you got enough, and where could we be doing better?
I mean, yeah, from like an anatomical point of view, I guess we learnt some of the basics. Well, I mean, even with women though, like I don't think the clitoris was ever kind of taught in school. So yeah, from, how to conceive, yes, we could have learnt that information, but pleasure is the number one thing we didn't learn.
Yeah.
And why that was so kind of detrimental to people is pleasure is what you kind of need to follow through a sexual experience. So rather than like, thinking your way through it and thinking like, hey, I should do this now, I should do this.
Feel.
If you just follow what feels good and you are attuned to the other person and kind of in tune with them and, kind of aware of what is feeling good for them as well and what isn't, that should be the number one thing that guides you through sex. But we're not taught about that at all. Pleasure just completely skips all of the curriculum and sex ed.
I find that really interesting because I feel like, I've got a beautiful partner, and so much of pleasure comes from communication, which then builds connection. And so many young people are learning to have sex through watching porn. And there's not much talking going on in porn, or it's some bullshit scenario and thing. How detrimental is porn to a young person's development of what a healthy relationship is from your view? And am I on the money there that like communication is the forefront of building connection, which can then, lead to pleasure?
Yeah,
am I on the money there a little bit?
no, absolutely. Communication
Two things, communication, porn.
Yeah, communication is like number one. I mean, you can still communicate in ways that are non-verbal, like there's non-verbal communication and there's verbal. But you're basically trying to share feedback. You're trying to guide the other person. So, I mean, communication is super important. And yeah, in porn, it's never, ever shown. So young people don't learn that communication is a really important part of sex. I think other ways that porn impacts young people, one is body image, particularly, with men, they might think that they need to have like this certain size penis. And if they don't, I've like, encountered some clients who who are conscious of their own bodies because of porn. Also from like a functional point of view, like men being able to keep erections for like certain amount of time or last certain amount of times, there's just like unrealistic standards. The same with women as well. Time it might take to orgasm or ways to orgasm, often in porn that's not correctly addressed. The other thing that porn teaches is the sequence of sex. And like a lot of people can fall into that sequence and enjoy it. So like, the kissing, the foreplay, the penetration, the orgasm. A lot of people do like that, and that's fine. But when people use that as the guide rather than pleasure, they can end up thinking their way through sex and then overlook moments that would bring up more pleasure because they might think, oh, well, I got to go to the next thing now. I got to do that other thing. Yeah,
it's like, don't follow what's right or wrong or what you've seen. It's just follow what feels right for you, what feels good, and that's what is right.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. A couple other things I would say porn has shapes in young people is their approach to sex, like people acting a bit pornified. And, that's okay if someone feels like they want to act pornified and they get turned on by that, which, if they've been watching porn, that's what they've kind of, accustomed their arousal system to like. But when the other person doesn't like that, it then can make it a little bit tricky to navigate that difference. Unless both people watch porn, both people find that arousing.
What would be, I mean, you'd probably be able to understand the statistics better, but surely men watch and a percentage far more porn than women. So then men have a different, on average, sort of skewed perception of what making love is, kind of thing.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
am I wrong? Is that just an assumption?
well, I don't know the figures,
Yeah.
but I guess just in my experience,
Experience of having clients.
yeah, clinical experience, it's definitely men watch it more,
Yeah, yeah.
and men have more of like a compulsive relationship with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have had female clients who have also, but
Not as
mostly
much.
men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your education now. So you study a degree of psychology at Deakin University. You then get
Yeah.
a Master's of Science and Medicine in Sexual and Reproductive Health at the University of Sydney. I'm looking at my notes.
Yeah.
I'm not quite off script. Yeah, tell me about that journey from psychology. You mentioned that, you started to become quite curious about sexual health, and obviously psychology is a massive part of sexual health. And like,
Yeah.
you probably, go on to say that it's probably the most important part, because it's like, we're all up in our head so much nowadays, and it's like, how do we let go and go to pleasure and feeling rather than just being stuck up in our head? So yeah, when you finished your degree in psychology, what was the transition into moving into a Master's of Science and Medicine?
Yeah, well, I mean, I really loved psychology. I found it super interesting. But I just felt like when I envisioned the end goal for me, I felt like I wanted to work in a field that also had like a fun element to it. And yeah, I couldn't see myself just only ever working as a clinician in like a psychology practice. So yeah, I was drawn to sex therapy because it very much deals with, quite important and heavy topics at times, but then there's also like the whole element of pleasure, and it's really fun being able to like guide clients and help clients figure out what brings them pleasure. So yeah, I was definitely drawn to that.
I can imagine you have like some experiences where clients, you're like, well, maybe try this, and they come back and they're like, oh my fucking God, I
Yeah.
just had an experience that I thought I could never have. Like,
Yeah.
having that experience must be amazing. But then the flip side, having someone, who's maybe been sexually assaulted and carries a lot of trauma towards, sex, and sees shame and guilt towards it, helping guide them from, the very other end of the spectrum to maybe a few steps forward on that spectrum, and being able to feel safe and comfortable around somebody of the opposite sex, or around, a situation that maybe they'd just been like, nah, it's not for me anymore. Is that kind of what you meant when you're like, I get both sides of the spectrum?
Yeah, I mean,
And everything else in between, probably.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the thing with my work is that it's often I ask the clients questions to figure out what they like.
Okay.
It's not so much me saying like, try this,
Okay.
because really the client has all the answers.
Yeah,
So
of course.
we might like look back at a time where they felt the most pleasure. Maybe
Yeah.
not like, doesn't need to be as much pleasure as they're capable of,
Mm-hmm.
but just the best time they've had. And we can kind of pull that apart and figure out what elements of that made it so good.
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea is you figure that out, and then you try to recreate those things. You try to find a context that is similar to that.
Okay.
So when I can work with clients with that kind of thing, and then they put it all together, and then they might try an experience where all those factors are there.
Mm-hmm.
Often, yeah, people will come back and say like, I had the best orgasm of my life. I had the best sex I've ever had. And that's like an amazing moment as a sex therapist to hear people say that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's talk. Yeah. So you finish your degree in sexual and reproductive health. How long after that until you're like, or probably through that degree also already practicing with clients from your psychology degree and building that? Because I want to talk about now, hypothetically, I come into your practice. What's probably one of the, let's go like 2 or 3 more common things that you'll see? Is it seeing couples together? Is it seeing a guy that's embarrassed about erectile dysfunction? Is it, I mean, there's probably everything and everything in between, but what are some of the more common ones? That way, anyone listening, we might be able to make them feel a bit more seen, and then offer some, not medical or, direct advice to anyone, but just some sort of generic advice based on what you've seen quite frequently in your practice.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say there's a few presentations that I see a lot.
Yeah.
One is definitely compulsive porn use or porn addiction,
Yeah.
often in men. which can often lead to other kind of sexual issues. Also performance anxiety and like erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation.
Yeah.
Also in men. Yeah, they're probably the three most common things that men would come to me for. There's also delayed ejaculation. So if they struggle to climax,
Finish, yeah.
but that one's less common. For women, sexual pain, so like vaginismus,
Yeah.
which is basically when they struggle to have penetrative sex.
Yeah.
Low desire. Low desire is a really big one.
Yeah. Wow.
Also mismatched desire in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when one partner has a higher level desire than the
Yeah.
other partner. The last one I would say is anorgasmia. So that's when people struggle to orgasm. Women.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to kind of go into almost each of these because
Yeah.
I'm going to butcher and probably forget a few of them. But let's start with the addiction to porn because that's probably a pretty
Yes.
common one. And you alluded to like it's detrimental more to many different things that I'm guessing quite often people wouldn't like realize. And I'm guessing one of the obvious ones is, by being addicted to porn, then you have less desire for your partner if you have a partner, or less desire to go and find a partner. So, yeah, if somebody, and as well, I don't know if this is breaking the confidentiality, but I guess if it's no one asking, are quite a lot of your male clients coming like in privacy of their partners, or is it? Sorry, I'm just like curious to hear this because there might be someone who's like, I'm like have shame to go and get something. Yeah.
Yeah, if I think about it, more men would book in without their partners knowing, and it's often that they're like afraid to have that conversation
Yeah.
with them. But it's not always for porn. Sometimes it's porn, but sometimes it's also their partner has low desire and they don't know what to do.
They don't know how to have that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, so then they book in because they're just trying to, they need some guidance on how to manage it. But yeah, with porn, how it affects men sexually, definitely like the loneliness element. So like they're less motivated to go out and find partners because porn becomes like a really safe, easy, convenient place to just, have some needs met, have, an orgasm, and also in a way get some like a sense of intimacy because you're like watching people have sex.
Yeah.
So it can just kind of like placate people and doesn't, it might not motivate them to like have real life experiences. Another one is, yes, it can be like low desire. They might not like desire sexual experiences because it doesn't bring out the same kind of like mental high as porn does, which is more common in relationships.
Yeah.
When like you're kind of having sex with the same person for years, that's when something like porn can become more exciting than maybe partnered sex. Also erectile dysfunction, because if you're used to having this like super stimulus to get aroused by, then when you have a partnered experience, often it just cannot do that. And again, that's usually in long-term relationships. When there's a new person, there's a lot of chemicals happening, you get excited, there's novelty, so that it can kind of be a little bit easier in that context. The final one that I see a lot is premature ejaculation. This is probably the one I see the most with porn addiction. Because when someone is watching porn, they're often really tuned into what they're watching. They're not embodied. They're not like noticing sensations in their body and noticing their arousal levels and like maybe like edging, where they're like putting their arousal levels up and putting it down. They're often just like glued to the screen.
Just with one final goal in mind.
Exactly.
Get to finish and...
Yeah. Yeah. So then when they have a partnered experience, they don't have the skills to like bring their arousal levels up and down. Also often because they watch porn, they have this expectation that they should last, if they're doing penetrative sex for in and out consistently for a few minutes.
Yeah.
They think that they shouldn't need to slow down, but like you need to slow down every now and again to like catch your breath and whatnot. So
For sure.
premature ejaculation is a big one.
What is, something that maybe someone can do if they do struggle with erectile dysfunction?
Yes. So if it's psychological, because I treat like the psychological element of it, Performance anxiety is like the biggest thing that underlies erectile dysfunction. And often it's that the anxiety isn't addressed during sex. So, as an example, if you start to feel anxious during sex, then anxiety will start at a 0 and it will eventually, creep up to like a 10 out of 10. But when you ignore the anxiety, when it's at a 1 or 2, and you just keep having sex as if nothing is wrong, often the anxiety will creep up because you're not acting consistently with how you feel. So one of the biggest things that I'll teach in my therapy sessions is to make space for the anxiety when it's at a 1 or a 2. And that could look like just kissing for a little bit longer or slowing down or bringing your partner in closer so you have more skin on skin contact. Just things that make you feel a bit safer emotionally rather than acting like nothing is wrong. Yeah.
No, so such good invitations for people who struggle with that. So erectile dysfunction is struggling to get an erection.
Yeah.
Premature ejaculation. I feel like that's probably what's more common in your.
I actually see it's like equal.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Often they actually co-occur. So
Can't get it up and then we'll go really quick.
Yeah, like they'll struggle to get it up, and then when they can get it up, they lose control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, so it makes sense. If they finally can get it up, it's like you don't have the practice or the ability to be able to, breathe your way through it to not far off.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the women's one now, because I think this is a really interesting one, and my audience is actually more women than men.
Okay,
Strangely
yeah.
enough, I think I'm like
Cool.
60-40% women
yeah.
audience. So
Yeah.
let's talk about those few common ones you talked about for women. One that really fascinates me is that mismatch of desire. And it kind of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, seems like it relates almost to the same concept of sort of love languages. Like we all kind of need to be loved in different ways. Even if you love getting touched like this, but your partner doesn't, it's trying to find that middle ground.
Yeah, I really love treating mismatched desire because I feel like I'm like a little investigator trying to figure out what has led to it. Often it is that, for people in long-term relationships, conflicts go unresolved. You move in together, your relationship becomes about getting things done. You're not dating anymore. You're not keeping the eroticism alive. You're not flirting and doing cheeky smacks on the bum and, complimenting each other. When you're kind of just in the day-to-day routine, it can suck the eroticism out of a relationship. And often what I see is that men can still have desire despite those things, but women will often, their desire will often take a hit when that stuff isn't there. So yeah, treating that is about firstly figuring out what's going on. Another one is people not having time for each other because people are just busy working and they make time, like they'll schedule their friends perfectly for a weekend in their calendars, maybe letting them know 3 days in advance. They'll get ready, look nice, but they might not approach their relationship with that same conscious thought.
I know that feeling. It's very easy to get stuck in the trap once you've been with someone for, a few years to, give your best self to the other situations and forget that and as well, and you probably see this too, when you spend time together, actually spend time together. And me and my partner are very good with, limiting our screen time, but I still get called out on it a lot, when I'm like kind of trying to work and juggle a bunch of stuff and organize while she's like, all I want you to do is be here with me. Like that's, doesn't need to be a long time, but when you are with me, be here. So that's something you're seeing quite often probably as well in relationships nowadays with technology and so many distractions. People are like, no, I just need you here. And for me, I know my partner's love language is quality time. And not saying I don't enjoy quality time, but for me, it's not as much my love language, but like learning, but for her to feel loved, she needs that from me. Yeah. And for me to feel loved, I need this and that from her. So yeah, is that something that kind of comes up in your practice? Is people not communicating? And that's something else I see, not investigating for one, or even knowing what your love language is or knowing what you like and just kind of letting it drift away. But then, not communicating. I always say like unspoken boundaries are future resentments. And it's like,
Yes.
so many people do something that pisses you off and you don't even tell them, and then they get angry at you, and it's like, yeah, so how important is communication and those boundaries?
Yeah, boundaries is a big one. Yeah, I one thing that I find comes up with people that struggle to put boundaries up is if they feel bad about wanting some alone time, they'll take that alone time, but they won't communicate it openly with their partner. They won't say like, "Hey, I've had a stressful day. I think I just need to like debrief or just like take a load off in the room for like an hour and just chill." They won't communicate that, but they'll just go off to the room silently. And then when they're having that alone time, it's not as good as it could be because they feel guilty. They're worried how their partner's feeling. And then this opportunity that could have been quite nourishing, then it falls short. And then they don't really get that recharge. And then their partner's also kind of maybe a bit hurt, maybe a bit confused. I don't know what's going on. So that's one place where I see communication and boundaries as a really important one.
Somebody who is dissatisfied with their partner, finding it very hard to communicate with them, what would be your advice for best steps? I'm sure that's probably one of the major ones. Like, I don't want to hurt their feelings, but it's not really doing it for me. But I'd rather not hurt their feelings than increase my own sort of pleasure.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, in order to progress, develop your sex life, communicating verbally is just the most efficient way to do it. Like, you could, if your partner's been doing something consistently and you try to kind of give them some hints during sex, maybe you move their hand, or, you know, if they've moved their hand away, you put the hand back there and you kind of like guide it with, you know, like the speed that you want, let's say, as an example. They might understand, and if they do in that moment, great. But often it's so unclear, and it's you know, you can't really express how important this certain thing is to you without saying it. So yeah, sometimes there is
hard. The flip side, then you say something and then they feel judged and go, "Oh well, I'm not doing it right." Then, and it's like,
yes.
so it's about having a relationship where you can communicate and not get triggered by just the simplest things.
100%. Yeah. And that's quite common. People will get offended and the other person is afraid of offending the other one. What I would say is a time outside of sex, or maybe just after sex, have a conversation with your partner and say, "Hey, I really want us to have the best sex life possible. Would you be open to me sharing some things that I would love to maybe change a little bit?" And ask for their kind of like permission to do that.
Yeah.
Because when they say yes, it gives them a little bit more control in that situation, rather than maybe throwing something onto them that they weren't prepared for and they might get offended by. So I'd say ask for that permission. But then I would also say, you know, do like a compliment sandwich. Like, I really enjoy how you do this, or I can tell that you're really trying to make me feel good when you do this. But how do you feel about maybe trying it a little bit longer or doing it a little bit earlier?
Yeah.
And then, you know, kind of offering that as like a question. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's keep this train of question going, but go into, not that what we're just talking about wasn't female or male side, but coming back to what you said before about women struggling with pain during sex.
Yes.
I'm sure you probably get women who struggle with pain, but then also don't even want to bring it up with their partner because they don't want to make them, you know, feel like uncomfortable. So, yeah, how important is it for women to be able to communicate, you know, to be able to, you know, enjoy themselves during sex? Because I'm sure you get a lot of women who like have sex, but it's not even pleasurable for them. For one, because they can't let go and feel safe enough to actually enjoy the experience.
Yeah.
But for to be able to communicate what actually feels good for them.
Yeah, yeah. Sexual pain is a really, really common one, as well as people like women who have experienced sexual trauma and then they kind of struggle with boundaries and with pleasure. Like, they're not quite sure what brings them pleasure.
Up,
yeah. So for something like that, I would firstly, what I was saying before, help figure out like where they have experienced pleasure in the past, what the context was that surrounded that. Bring more awareness to the fact that they can experience pleasure and they can experience arousal if the certain context is right, once they figure out what they like, then a massive part of that treatment is boundaries. So learning to say no when they're not wanting to go further. Also being able to have a little bit of sexual interaction without there needing to be the entire thing. Because, some people with sexual pain, they're not ready for penetration. They're not ready for that yet. They're not aroused enough. But because it's something they feel they should do, they'll go to that next step when they're not feeling ready. So being able to communicate that either they need, more foreplay, or that just that time today is just going to end with a nice little bit of foreplay, but that's it. Or outer course. Maybe not foreplay. It's a bad word.
I haven't heard it called outer course. Foreplay is all I've ever heard it called, outer course.
Yeah.
Why foreplay not a good word?
Mainly because it's, foreplay says that it's the play that happens before intercourse. So it's
Okay,
kind of
it doesn't have to
assuming.
the intercourse can happen, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So outer course can be, just a nicer way to frame it, as it can be the
Called
center and it's
play.
fine.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about when it comes to sex drive, like what is normal? What is like, yeah, because I feel like I guess it matters on just the the matching of, what you desire and what your partner desires. But then, what are the things that are having a detrimental effect to people's sex drive? And I want to kind of curse this into probably my assumption once again that stress is a massive thing when it comes to being able to, feel the drive to have, not intercourse, to have,
Sex,
a sexual experience with someone.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the first question?
I guess the question is, what's the, like how much is stress
normal.
standing in the line of like normal sex drive, I guess?
Yeah. To answer the first question around what's kind of like the normal, I mean, it is just all about what two people like.
exactly.
One person.
Well, that's why I was like, there's not really normal, if you don't have
Yeah.
it. Because I just kind of want to go that if, a couple together, is it a couple times a week? And then vice versa, if you are single or you are, dating, should it be, you're looking to self-pleasure daily, weekly, like...
Everyone's
whatever's right for you.
different.
Exactly.
Whatever's right for the person. And even relationships, there might be a couple that have sex twice a month, but they're both really happy.
Yeah.
They have a really great experience when they do it, but they just don't need it more.
Yeah.
And then there might be some couples that have it twice a week, and they couldn't even imagine having it twice a month. Yeah. As long as people are happy and content, then that's the normal.
Okay, I love that. Now, yeah, let's talk about, what was the second part of my question there?
The biggest things that are impacting.
Oh yeah, stress. Let's talk about how what are the things that are impacting our stress drive? Like, is the food we're eating impacting like our stress drive? Is the obviously stress that we're going through in our day-to-day life? What's a big one? Obviously, when people have kids, it changes like different.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing, of this generation, it would be stress.
Yeah.
Like absolutely stress between working so much, but also, other stresses of like the world, the economy.
Yeah.
There's
Climate.
The climate, yeah. There's a lot of things kind of happening. Also social media, the impacts of, technology.
Does that come back? Sorry, this is just a weird. Do you think that comes back to like a deep psychological, biological feeling if we think the world's going to end when it's like, climate change, global wars? I wonder if it has any like deep biological, like I don't want to mate kind of depth to it. Or just like procreate. Because there's a lot of people who are going like celibate because they're, the future's screwed. Like I'm not going to bring kids into this world.
I have heard that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've definitely heard people say they don't want to have kids because they don't want to raise them in, like the world that kids would come up in.
It's actually the safest it's ever been on planet Earth. When you look at the grand scheme of things, people are living for longer than ever. Like if your kid gets sick, there's like a better healthcare than ever. It's like it's actually kind of the safest it's ever been. So that argument's super interesting.
Yeah. But I guess people might not want to procreate, but they still have desire for sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless someone didn't want to have sex, unless they were looking to have
true.
kids. But yeah, I would say stress is the biggest one.
The biggest one.
Yeah.
So how can people, from your I guess, side of the education world when it comes to sexual health and Bachelor of Psychology. How can people get out of their head a little bit to be able to enjoy and be present in their sexual experience? Any techniques prior to, engaging in sex, like switching off phones, making sure, you have pure presence?
Yes, yes. I would say, I mean, you can't have, well, it's hard to have desire when you're not kind of at baseline. Like if you're so stressed and overwhelmed, it's hard to kind of tap into your body and be ready for sex. However, there is a caveat because some people can use sex as a way to de-stress. Some people, no matter how stressed they are, they know the benefits of having sex, so they will have it because they know it will make them feel better. But not everyone can approach it that way. I feel like there's kind of two different types of people. The people that struggled with sex when they're stressed. The one thing is getting yourself to baseline. So you have to de-stress. And, if you have a partner, that could be using your partner as a resource to de-stress, because also they're the person that you'll have sex with. So whether that's, opening up about your stress, I see so many clients who either them or their partners, when they become stressed, they close off. It's the worst thing you can do for your relationship because your partner is there to support you. So use them as a resource, open up, it builds your emotional connection, it builds your trust with them. And when you have that with them, that, that all helps to build desire. And, and in the same way, it also helps to de-stress you. Connection is a de-stressor.
Yeah.
So I would say that's how you could kind of use your partner or include your partner in that process. But maybe there's other things like, having a warm bath, maybe doing some meditation, or, when you get out of the shower, apply some moisturizer for like 10 minutes, do some deep breathing, anything that would de-stress you.
Regulate the nervous system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Would help to, open up the possibility for sex.
Love that. So many good things. I've got two last questions and it's going to start moving towards sort of children and got a mind blank today. My brain's not working that well. Conception.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about, from your, obviously wealth of knowledge, if a couple, and I'm asking this from a personal point of view, because me and my partner are hoping and thinking about children at some stage in the next, 12 to 24 months. What are some things that we can do to, I guess, increase our chance to, conceive children?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's not like my exact specialty, but what I would say from a kind of sexology pleasure point of view is keep the focus on the pleasure and the intimacy. I see some clients who, it becomes very goal focused. It's like, okay, you're ovulating, let's have sex now. And that can kind of suck the pleasure out of it. And then it just feels like a task that needs to be done. So I would say start maybe like the ovulation period with maybe like a nice ritual, like have a nice dinner together, have a bath together, something that shows that it's not just about the act of conceiving. You're conceiving because you're in love, and like something that kind of sets the stage for that.
Yeah. I love that. Last question I want to ask you is, if you're a parent of a, teenager, and I can't imagine you're a parent of a teenager if you're 31, but I'm sure you probably have some clients, who are at that stage where it's like, how do I talk to my kids? Because I never had the talk that, we hear about and you see in movies. If you were like a parent of a, teenager, at what age would you recommend having some sort of a talk with them? And what would be the topics if you had, let's call it, if you had a 10 to 15-year-old son and daughter, what would you say to each of them, and when and why?
Yeah, I mean, so from
the pleasure point of view of like, how would you, with what you know now, destigmatize, like, sex doesn't have to be this scary thing, do it safe. I'm not going to take the words out of it, but what would be the few things that you'd look out for to,
Yeah, I mean, like, if I think about my clients, because I always do like a sexual history with them, so I learn like when they first started to display like interest in other people, watching porn. So what I've often encountered is young boys start watching porn around like 13, 14, 12 even. So that could be a good time to talk to sons and
yep.
say, like maybe educating them on the fact that it's not, it's not accurate. It's not a form of education. I don't know, like if they're going to have access to it, at least you can guide them a little bit.
Yeah.
I guess it comes down to each parent's preference though. Like they might say to their kids, you can't watch it.
Yeah.
But then there's the risk that they might
Go
even
and
do
it
it
anyway.
Yeah. So you may as well give them education on it. But then I would say, from ages 13, that's when kids start to like kiss other people and, like they might go to parties. And I would say educating, especially young girls, on have a sexual experience when you feel safe.
Yeah.
It's okay to say no. You don't need to go through with a sexual experience just because you're hanging out with them or because you've gone back to their house. You can always say no. And, whatever you feel like you want to do is okay.
Yeah.
And just like educating them on the communication side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is good now. There is, consent education being brought through the school system. I had Chanel Contos on the podcast, who's,
cool.
Chanel's amazing to see what she's done and how much, hopefully culture is going to change in schools and starting to learn about this stuff. And I think, from the work I do in schools around mental health, I can see how much students are really taking my lessons rather than just the teachers, because I have to teach so many other topics. It's like there is some topics that are quite niche that external providers are important, where I think like your education as a way to make sex and, pleasure not this taboo topic. It's like, no, this is like a great part of life if it's done safe and it's done by two consensual people. Like, to non-make it taboo is, I think a really important thing.
Absolutely. I would also say one thing I see that, like from our generation, like especially, that kids used to say that has really harmed people is like dick tease, like calling girls like a dick tease. Blue balls, this concept of blue balls, or like frigid, or even amongst guys, like pussy whipped. All of these things just like create shame. Yeah. And they take the like connection out of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true.
I could explain all of those for like an hour each, but
oh yeah, I know. Yeah, like he's whipped and all this stuff. No, I think so interesting. You kind of already just went there as an extra thing, but is there anything that we haven't touched on today that you think is important that we touch on? Any topic, anything that you want to share, anything that you think might add value?
One thing that does come up a lot in therapy is with women, when they've had like a sexual trauma or multiple sexual traumas, they often can feel like disgusted by sex in their relationship with someone who they love and who is very respectful towards them. And it can be very confusing. And it's something that's really not spoken about enough. And when I do speak about it, people are like the women that do experience it, they're just like kind of blown away that there's someone talking about it and someone that understands what they're going through. So I think that one comes up so much in my work, and it's like the one thing that I see that isn't spoken about enough. So I guess I just want to normalize that and express that there is like help for that kind of thing.
What is the help if someone is going through that? Is just listening to this and going like, oh wow, yeah, I have gone through a few things and I've kind of just, pushed them down, let the nervous system just like, put a bit of dirt over it, but or, brush it under the rug. How important is it to, release that trauma? And what are some of the steps, I guess, that you can take people through or that people can find if they need it?
Yeah, so in my therapy sessions, it's basically about creating more safety around sex for that person. So again, it'd be like teaching them communication skills, teaching them what their boundaries are. And often it's that sex should not be 0 or 100, meaning like there shouldn't be like you just jump into an experience and then you have to do the full thing. It's about taking little baby steps and saying no when you feel it. Like I always give this analogy. If you walked into like your office and every day you walked in, it was fine. And then one day you walked in and there was like a bat in there and you're like really afraid of bats. The next day you would like just maybe open the office door and then close it because you'd be too scared to walk in. Maybe the next day after that, you would open a little bit, put your foot in, and then you would close it. Maybe the day after that, you might like need a friend to help you. And then you'd walk into the room for like 5 minutes and then go back out because like, you want to still keep yourself regulated. What happens with sex is because people aren't taught to like follow what feels right. They're taught to just do what is right. It's like they are walking back into that office as if like nothing is wrong, but every time they do it, they go into shock out of fear. So the idea is teaching them to approach sex again in the way, in the way that feels right for them, so they can create more safety around it.
Beautiful. I've got one more question that I think is going to be a very common thing too. How do you help someone who's been in a long-term relationship and they still love their partner, but they've lost attraction to them?
Good one. Yeah.
Sexual attraction to them, they're not turned on by them anymore.
Yeah.
Or what sort of advice do you, if someone's listening right now and they feel like their partner isn't attracted to them anymore, or vice versa, what are some, I guess, just bits of advice to re-spark spark in a relationship?
Yeah, I would say, sexual attraction, like it doesn't, it might start physical, but in a relationship, it grows because you're in love with them and you have a connection. So if you found that your sexual connection or sexual attraction towards them has gone down, I would probably say the general connection in the relationship has gone down. And maybe you're just focusing on like the physical, the lack of physical attraction, because maybe that's just like what, I guess what
You've been accustomed to.
Yeah, you've been accustomed to thinking about, but you just like suddenly don't see them as like a sexual person anymore. So I would say focus on building the connection back with them, like more vulnerability, more transparency, talk about your feelings, share something with them that's quality time, share something with them that's a little bit vulnerable, but where they can like prove that you can trust them. All of those things help to deepen a connection. And in long-term relationships, that is what keeps desire alive, because the physical element will, if you're just relying on a physical attraction in a relationship, it will always go, because the novelty will fade away, and there'll be some other shiny person or some other video you could watch where you would get far more of a like response or pleasure from. So there needs to be something more beyond the physical attraction.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel probably TMI for my own podcast, but anytime I have like some sort of a charge, whether there's tears or an argument or something, it kind of usually leads to like the best sex, because it's kind of like
absolutely
vulnerability of like sharing how you're actually feeling, and then it's like, oh, so that we're on the same page now, and now you can have that attraction again.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you kind of got to go through the challenge rather than go around it. On the other side is good sex.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. That's the pot of gold waiting on the other side.
That's it. Well, this has been such a fun chat. Thank you so much for coming over to my place and sharing a bunch about your story, the work you do, giving people, a roadmap towards better sex, towards safer sex, towards, more pleasure in their life, because we all deserve to have the pleasure. We all deserve to, have sex in a way that feels good for us. And, it's one of the kind of cornerstone based, like biological things in life that we all get to do. And like, it creates this chemical reaction that makes us feel good, as do a lot of things. But anyone who's been lucky enough to have an orgasm, feels like, it's a pretty bloody good thing. So thank you for helping people to get to experience that more, to get to experience something that is so important in life. I do finish Good Humans with the same question for everyone. So what does being a good human mean to Laura Miano?
Oh, I would say being kind to people, being kind, selflessness. I think we live in a time where, there's social media, there's a lot of kind of I don't know if self-obsession is the word, but we're losing these little elements of selflessness.
Yeah.
So I would say doing something kind for other people where you don't expect anything in return.
Very well put. Well, thank you so much. You've done something kind for everyone today, sharing your story and sharing all your advice. Lastly, is there anything you want to promote? Anything coming out? Any website? Any programs? Your business? Now's the time just to direct anywhere where to go. I'll leave it all in the show notes as well. But yeah, anything that you want to encourage people to check out?
Yeah, so on my website, as I mentioned, I've got a few resources. So for couples that want to try and connect a little bit more, I've got a 50 questions activity that they can do from my blog page. I've also got a couple of guided masturbation audio recordings from one of my team members that she recorded that can be, it's both for men and for women. For men that struggle with premature ejaculation, really good for them.
Okay, to sort of help guide you to take your time.
Exactly, an edge and like,
Okay.
yeah, not rush through. And then for women, it can be helpful for people that struggle with desire or sexual pain because it can often bring up arousal. And in a lot of cases, those people struggle with that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll put all that in the show notes. I'll put your social media. Go check out and follow Laura. And yeah, thank you so much for jumping on Good Humans Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Thanks so much.